and those back lots, which is a plus to subdividing. Because I am a special case. You know, you can't say, oh, she's all agriculture and she's got cows. No, I don't, I got horses, so I'm not even agriculture. You know, but I've got, you know, I'm grandfathered in with everything, but I don't know what, I've got 5, I call kids, but they're adults, that when I croak, they're gonna have it. Now, I wanna make sure what they deal with, they don't look at me and say, man, she was stupid. You know.
I have no idea.
I would say those back 4 lots, those back 4
Yeah.
would be agriculture. Because if you look at that, that's where the majority of my horses are and everything, that's pasture. I don't have no development back there. That way if one of them want to build a house, they can. And then the front, where my building is, that's mixed. And you have the parcels to say, this is this and this is that.
So I mean, we can make that tentative until the subdivision? Unless someone on the commission has a thought.
I think she's absolutely correct. You know, when
Yeah.
property
Do
is
you want
divided
my,
in half.
do you want my blueprint back?
No, right, just-
Okay.
I have a question on this. There's been so many drafts I'm behind, okay? But you're zoned agricultural now?
Yep, all of it.
All of it?
Yeah, I always
What
have
about
been.
McDonald's place?
It's mixed.
She's one of those.
Who drew that arbitrary line?
It's always been like that.
Yeah, there is a little bit of pink in front of your lot.
You're not all agriculture.
Just a little, like where that little sliver comes down on the left.
Or is that the next property?
Nah,
No, that's her
I
property.
know what.
That's right in front of her property. Right,
Unless that's what we're
What we looked at before was this property here. That's what we did now.
Yeah, that's where they were gonna put the motels at. Be funny. But everything, even my front lot that had that commercial is white as agriculture.
okay.
But now you want it to be mixed use.
Yes, she actually requested Carolyn make her split before, but Carolyn wouldn't do it
Right.
What was the reason?
because it was one parcel.
Because it's one parcel and but she does 2 different things on it.
And McDonald Farm requested their use also.
Oh, this is a new one?
So where do you think that mixed use line should go?
About in half.
But I think we're gonna,
Follow the
You have to follow the subdivision.
Follow the
yeah, we
subdivision.
could estimate it
Oh,
in
okay,
there,
so
but once that's
probably
filed,
gonna
it'll
be
just
like
be.
used in
Did you
there.
look at my subdivision?
Yeah.
Well, you know, these back roads, back here are for 13-acre lots. So this is from here back, agriculture, and then from there forward. Because really, I mean, the corridor's right here.
Yeah.
You get off, if somebody wants
That's
to
where
do
they're.
something, that's where they're going to go.
Okay, so we'll do a tentative, we'll make that mixed use, and then it'll be, the official line will be based on your subdivision.
Okay, next time.
I mean, I guess, or do we wanna finish up on marijuana?
Technically, you never finished with the horses. Did you get all that?
I thought we were adding the horses.
Horses, mules, bison,
Donkeys.
donkeys,
A mule and a donkey are 2 separate things.
Alpacas.
alpacas.
I just want to say, can't quite,
Are they
you can't
livestock?
quite say exotics at the same time either. Excuse me, folks. Wait, just hang
How
on,
about,
folks.
Again, I'd say include but
well,
not limited
exotics
to,
would be
so
a
we forget that.
menagerie. I can't, it would be hard to say that a menagerie wouldn't be somewhat a farm. And they're not livestock, but there's a lot of propagators that are farmers. And you may never see that in my lifetime, but still, it takes one.
Seems to me like it's gonna take a lot of research to sort that one out.
Well, I mean, they can always apply
You
for a
will
zoning hearing
probably,
board approval. And if it's not specific or clear in the definitions and the board or the zoning officer or someone takes a position otherwise, that's why you have a hearing board that would review that and determine,
yeah.
we forgot to put donkeys in there, but, you know, horses, mules are all allowed. A board could interpret that as that's a similar,
But you
and
better,
the approval would be given.
you better consider bison. Bison's coming on hard and there's a lot of it, and that's an exotic animal. So when you write it up, you better make sure you don't put exotic, cause then you're gonna be stepping in a big puddle again.
Okay.
Michael, wait, two things related to what Donna and some others brought up. If you put, you have farm animals, you have domestic and wildlife.
In
Like
the
your elk,
definition?
your bison, all that would be, well, I mean, to do an all-inclusive as far as animals, you could have, if you wanna put farm, domestic, or wildlife in addition to livestock.
Now, the domestic should be horses. It's always been and always will. Exotic should be, like you said, Jimmy.
I mean, elk are on a comeback, you know. I got a deer farm myself, I mean. The other point I have, to Donna's point, I'm in a similar situation. You
Yeah,
know,
you are.
I've got 128 acres and you guys got about 8 of it in mixed and the rest ag. I'm in the 40 corridor, 40 Lake Road, right on the corner, you know what I mean? How do you do that? Same thing with Donna. How do you determine what somebody can and can't do with their property? If she splits it 50-50, or I did the same thing, regardless, mixed use and ag, and then say one of her kids, the part that she has ag, maybe she deeds that to them, maybe they want to open a business there. They should be allowed to. You know what I mean? It's just, how do you know what I mean? Maybe you need a mixed / ag zone, you know what I mean? Where you can do, you really ought to be able to do what you want with your property.
I have a question about, God forbid we ever go through another reassessment, but after you guys get this done, is there any tax implications to the fact that, like, if he's mixed and she's mixed, partially mixed with the clean and green? No reassessment board could ever come back and say, oh, wait a minute, this is zone mixed and it can't qualify for clean and green, because I seem to remember just reading something about that in the paper over there at the Trax Farm.
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know the answer. That'd be a question for the assessors. I know that when you have to apply for clean and green, there's a list of activities that you check one of those to qualify. So without doing any research, without being on the board that deals with those, I would say that as long as that activity that qualifies you for clean and green, you're still able to check one of those boxes, I would assume you'd still qualify for clean and green. I understand your question, it's a valid point, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think what he's asking, correct me if I'm wrong, say you got a farm that is now under clean and green,
Correct.
and it's agricultural. You guys zone it mixed.
I understand that,
okay?
that's what I'm saying, as
Because
long as you can check those
designation of
boxes.
the use or the zone,
My understanding is that you have to
Tax
qualify, you have to do one of the, and again, you guys know better than I do, what the handful of items on that sheet that you have to qualify for in order to have clean and green status. My thought would be, and again, that's just a thought, that'd be a question, I can call the assessor, you guys can call whatever.
I believe the
whatever-
answer is that they said no, but they couldn't guarantee the future,
Which, yeah.
which is why we chose
Which I mean,
sales
the
ag.
question's been brought up, farms that allow a well site or allow something on their property. Well, that's not farming, that's not clean and green, that's the complete opposite of clean and green. So there was a lot of talk about should those be rolled back, you know, should the 7-year look back on the entire property, should that come out of clean and green? Should they have to subdivide the 15-acre lot, the 20-acre lot that's housing that, and that section would no longer be clean and green? I mean, I know that's been talked about. My understanding right now is that the county's not taking any action on those. Can I guarantee that they won't down the road? But the people that put that in at that time, that's what was allowed. You know, I can't really answer that. I don't know what the county's gonna do down the road.
Now, the county on me, when they put pad site on me, took it off of clean and green and rolled me back
Yeah.
7 years. And I had to pay taxes on that, on regular taxes, not clean and green.
Correct, so, and previously, they weren't taking that position, they changed their position, they might change it again, I don't know. That's what I don't know.
Years ago. When was that, Jim?
Probably 5-6 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And did they do the whole property or just the
Just
portion?
what they acreage supposedly took for the pad site and everything, and rolled it off of clean and green, and had to pay residential taxes on it or whatever.
Just the impact,
Yeah.
like whatever the pad and
I
access, right?
think part of the issue there is though, you're talking about a difference
It's no
between
longer considered.
something that you're drawing income off of versus something that you guys arbitrarily draw a line in the dirt and say,
Yeah,
this is, because the other thing is, if I'm not mistaken, if I would, whatever it is that I decide that I wanna do, and then I'm considered to be non-conforming, correct, in that correct vernacular? So if that ever has to go to court, I am now considered non-conforming, that's not gonna stand very well in my favor if it goes to court. That's not gonna be a favorable term in my favor. You understand what I'm saying? If I'm considered to be non-conforming with my land use.
I guess it depends on what you go to court for.
I've been non-conforming all my life, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, again, it would depend on what you're, I
I'm-
understand the term has a negative connotation in that sense. From a legal standpoint, it's a valid designation that hundreds of thousands of properties have
Okay.
throughout, and they have protection. There's a lot of law about non-conforming use.
Okay.
It's been heavily litigated.
But we were here first. See how that works? It rankles just a little bit.
I'm not arguing.
So if you're considered mixed, can you still claim clean and green?
That's the question
That's
for
what
the
we're discussing.
assessors.
Because I don't understand, if you're gonna do residential, and you're doing agriculture, and you're doing mixed, frankly, I don't think you should be able to tell me what I do with my land. So I think West Alexander Borough should be residential, and everything be mixed, everything else be mixed. So if I wanna do something on my property one day, I have the right to do it, because people are doing it anyhow. So if you consider everything else mixed, it gives me the opportunity to say, we have a farm, we're gonna farm here, and on this land over here, we're gonna build a business. I don't think, you know, you started this meeting out by saying that a couple of people approached or has brought up about the cannabis. Okay, then you started talking about the zoning, why we need to have a zoning, a policy so that people can bring cannabis into this district. Well, if it's considered mixed, they can put it wherever they want, I don't care where they put it. If they wanna put it out 231, put it out 231, people will travel out that way. You know, it doesn't matter to me, but I don't think that you, as a zoning board, should be able to tell me what I'm gonna do with my land.
Amen. Exactly.
You know, this is a rural town. There are farming roots here that nobody has the right to come in here and tell us, farmers, what we're going to do in the future. And if first of all, I don't even really understand how this all even started. So shame on me, because in the very beginning, I didn't follow it, because I didn't frankly have the time. But now, you know, I'm learning more and more as I go. And I'm not comprehending this whole entire thing. Who is really gonna benefit from this? because it sure as the heck isn't me or anybody else sitting in this room. I have a tendency to think if somebody's sitting out on the redevelopment authority, or somebody's sitting out on some board somewhere. I don't want big residential housing in this area. And if somebody else does, that's fine. I do not. So I think, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to set something up so someday there can be residential housing, maybe on Old McDonald Farm, I don't know. And if they do, and you put housing up there along Grimes Road, and we spread manure in our field, I'm gonna guarantee you that they are not gonna be happy campers. But that's when they're gonna say, well, I can't stand the smell, or, and it's just gonna start one big fight. This doesn't make any sense to me.
Which is the goal. They
That's what we've been saying all
They
along.
tried this about 20 years ago, and I went to the meeting, it was down in Claysville, and they made their presentation, they showed their map, and really, they had the I-70 Route 40 corridor zone, commercial, and everything else was, and I kept asking, why do we need this? Why do we need this? McDonald's and Walmart, they aren't building out on Dog Run, and finally, the guy that was doing the presentation had had enough, and the girl that was sitting there hadn't said a word yet, but I finally, about the fourth time I asked why, she gave the explanation. She said, well, we find that people want to move out here for the amenities, and they don't have any protections. And I told her, to her face, BS the English means they want to move out here, build a big fancy house, and then start bitching about the farmer down the road and his stink.
They wanna move here to get away
Yeah.
from all that crap, and
It's
then when
pushing
they
this way.
implement it.
You guys know that. I mean, you're intelligent people sitting on the board. It's moving this way. We're at South Point. Now we're coming closer, and it's coming closer. And it's coming to our area. Well, maybe we don't want it in our area. I don't want to be Upper St. Clair. If I did, I could move there. I could afford it. I could move to Upper St. Clair and buy one of those big houses. But I don't want that. I want to live here in Claysville, in a rural community where I can raise my children and feel comfortable.
And free.
And free, that's right. I don't want someone telling me what I'm gonna do with the layered land from years and years and years past. Especially when it's a board, and that board is gonna change and change and change consistently. When you're gone or somebody else, then my children are gonna have to deal with that, then my grandchildren. That's not why we're here. If I wanna live someplace where there's a zoning board, I will move there. I will move in Pittsburgh. I don't wanna be there. I don't understand where you're going with this, or why you're doing this. You can sit there and smirk all you want, but I
I'm not
really.
smirking at all, I'm
Okay.
agreeing with you,
This is
100%.
This is
I,
ridiculous.
I actually spoke to at least 4 people at the polls last year that specifically moved to this area. They checked
Mhm.
to see if we had zoning first, because the one lady had horses, she lived in Allegheny County. She had had a gut load, and she checked Donovan Township to see if we had zoning before they bought property here, because they didn't want to be bothered.
Can someone tell me, like, in a couple sentences, or maybe a nice paragraph, why are we doing this? Why?
Sherry Lee is
No,
the chairman.
I wanna hear what they have
No, I was
to say.
gonna say, Lee's the chairman.
Do you know Lee?
Yes.
And the answer is,
The answer is the zoning is there to protect all of the residents.
From what?
Not just individuals.
do you know the definition of the word
So
zoning?
if we do mixed, that means I can either do agricultural, or I can do industrial, correct?
It means whatever, you would have to look at the chart to see what's listed in that zoning district.
Well, but that would have its pros and its cons as well, because if we did mixed everywhere, then I could be on this side of Grimes Road, and I could be agricultural, and then they could be industrial with a big plant on the other side. So that may not be I'm just throwing things out. That may not be the way to go either, but
To be,
I don't understand. I don't think we need zoning.
okay,
We can
no,
protect
not to stop
ourselves.
you, but, okay, so my understanding is the reason that zoning was brought up a year and a half ago was that there was a couple different items that have come, a couple different facilities that have come into the township and there were complaints or questions about their use, and it was explained to the board at that time that without zoning, the gun range was the first one.
Yep.
Again, and there might have been other things before I was involved. I know Gary, comes to all the regular meetings, so I don't get everything.
That's what lit the fuse.
Okay, so my understanding is there's a lot of complaints and a lot of issues with the gun range.
Okay.
Our simple response to them was, you don't have zoning. If they meet whatever little regulations there are, they can put it wherever they want within the township. I'm not done, thank you. So that was the explanation. Then there was some question about some oil and gas and where things were being put, and some questions about that, and questions about, just overall questions about that. And knowing the development, knowing where you're located, knowing, by West Virginia, Ohio, this area of western Pennsylvania, there's questions about that. Again, the response to the supervisors was, it's very difficult to regulate them without zoning. You can do it within a little bit, just like we had a question with the range. Range just put in a huge, I don't wanna use the word huge because I don't know how big the actual facility is, but they just put in a tank farm, a temporary one. There was questions on why they didn't have to come here. Once again, without zoning, it's not a development, it's not a subdivision or land development. Under the definition, you can't regulate it. You don't have much say. So from our office's standpoint, that's how we were brought in. My understanding is the supervisors then bid it out, had a zoning firm that won the low bid, came in, started this process, went through this. I don't know how much of
Maybe
this,
something simple then, as zoning and the way you were talking about it has turned into something like a bonfire, because they put stuff in there that obviously should not have been put in there. Is that fair to say?
to be honest with you, I don't know, because I wasn't at those meetings. The document that we started off with, I got involved late December, have been here for the last 3.5, 4 months. As multiple people have said, we've revised it, we've drafted, each of these meetings go past 10 o'clock. We're going through it, we're taking input. I know there was complaints, I know there was questions previously about the feedback from the public, or lack thereof, and the response from the party involved previously. So that's what the planning commission has been trying to do. As far as zoning goes, and I'm not saying you guys should agree with this or not, but this is one of the least restrictive zoning documents that I've seen in other townships. There's rural townships that, you know, that we also deal with, that have more restrictive zoning districts. 95%, 90% of this is agricultural. So I guess what I'm saying is, what I've seen and what I've attempted to do since I got involved is to make it as least restrictive to allow the rural nature of the township to move forward. And the general idea behind zoning is so that you can't change what happened yesterday. But starting today and moving forward, what this is supposed to look like and what this document's ultimately supposed to look like is how you want the township to develop in the future. Because as you said, development is coming, change is coming. So if you don't have zoning at all, and the board could ultimately say that based on your comments and decide they don't want zoning, they don't recommend zoning, the board of supervisors could take that action. That's not for me to decide. My job right now is just to try and reflect what this board wants, giving the public input. But the issue is that without zoning, another type of gun range or another one, so when you're saying you don't want a housing development, the idea when you look at a zoning map and you look at what the uses are, if you buy property here, that's the idea behind zoning. You know what could potentially come here because there are zoning and it tells you what's a permitted use, what's not permitted in this area, so that you have an expectation when you move into that area, okay, yeah, farming's allowed here, it's a rural area. Most people moving here probably are okay with farming or okay with rural areas. That's the nature of it. The idea behind this is that that's likely what it's gonna that's what it's likely going to remain, except for a few pockets. If you buy along this corridor, chances are it's gonna remain rural, but there's a chance that there might be some development that's commercial in nature. So that's the idea behind zoning, is that you move somewhere, yeah, Upper St. Clair Peters, that's to a different level, obviously. This right here is not to that level, and I'm not saying that is an acceptable level, we're trying to get to that, if you ultimately decide that you want any type of level. But that's the idea behind zoning. And that's how it got started, at least when I got involved.
Except that people tend to forget zoning would not have outlawed oil and gas, and it would not have changed the gun range. And
Correct.
anytime, she might have bought a property where there's a lot of rural area, but then even if zoning went in, somebody could apply for a variance.
You can't apply for a variance.
And then she would be right next to a gun range. So while
I mean,
it's
she would have a
zoning,
say. The gun range came in, no one had a say, same thing like oil and gas. They come in, you don't have a say. I know that when we had an issue with the roads, if you had to have a conditional use hearing and those get inspected, you have a lot more say prior to that.
I really wouldn't bring up the road, dude, if I was you.
That's
I
fine.
really wouldn't bring up Delashawne.
Oh, Jerry.
But that's the idea behind zoning. So, to answer that question.
Well, zoning runs away a lot of business too.
Okay, I mean, that's.
It definitely runs away a lot of business.
Okay.
Well,
Back in 2009, I had a gentleman come up, everybody knows, my father built that building in 1993. And he did a good job with the building, and he used it. In 2009, a man came, he redid the inside of that building, he put in lay-down yards, and he invested close to probably, and I hate to say it, but probably $500,000. And his first thing before he laid down 1 cent was, is there any zoning? Because he would have never have done anything. The man set me up for life because there was no zoning. And I owe him nothing. He walked in there in 10 months, he put that kind of investment, and he walked out, and him and his wife are like family to me. And they would have did it for any of you people that was in the same position that had the building at that time. He put the buildings in out here at West Alexander. He run 3-phase power. He paid out of his pocket through West Alexander. His experience with Donegal Township, he will tell you, it would take a lot for him to come back. And there's no zoning. You know, am I for zoning? No, heck no. But I'll deal with it because 9 tenths out of 10, it's gonna be shoved down my throat. So I'll make the best of it.
I would like to make 2 comments to Sherry's points. First of all, as far as development, and the reason we don't need zoning is because it's limited in this township by water and sewer, and there's none available. So you can't build anywhere, and I know that for a fact because we took the last views on the sewage plant. And number 2, we voted unanimously to send out a survey to find out what you thought about zoning, and it was rescinded by the supervisors.
So why are we, what's going on here? If you sent out a survey to see what I thought.
We were allowed to send out the survey. We voted unanimously to do
So
so.
the supervisor stopped you from sending it out?
Yep, 2 days
Shame on
later.
you. Shame on the supervisor. Because you are there because of me and the people in this room.
The group was even offered to pay for it,
That's
so
a
there would be
shame.
no cost to
There
the
is no
township.
business in this country that operates like that and is successful.
Sam's dear.
There is no business. You have to go out and ask your customers what they think of the job you're doing. You have to go out and ask your customers what they think of the service, the customer service that you provide them. And you stop this board, this planning commission from doing that? You have a lot of people to answer to. And I didn't come here to speak, trust me. But that's appalling. It's absolutely appalling.
Lee made a statement that it's for our protection, and then you turn around and say you've drawn up the least restrictions. So what I'm hearing is, we've got the least protection. If I'm gonna be protected, protect me all the way. But what it's come down to is, we've hired a zoning officer to harass the citizens of this community, when we're already overtaxed, and now we gotta worry about somebody coming up and saying, your house needs painted, or you need this, or you need that. We don't need that here. We don't need it. We don't want it, and we don't need it.
Amen.
Thank you for letting me know that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Timmy, could you?
I'll start from the top, though.
I just had a question, and I don't know, Lee, can you answer me what the definition of zoning is?
Oh,
not the, no, not the Webster's Webster's definition, no. I can tell you what I think that zoning means, I can tell you what I think zoning does. And to me, as I've always said, the zoning is there to protect the individual from whatever comes down the pipe. If we had zoning, we've gone through this and through this, the gun range wouldn't be in my back door, okay? It could have been put out somewhere out in the country where it didn't, rattle everybody's doors in town.
Is that the same gun range you work at?
Is,
Is that the same gun range you work at and get money from?
Let's make this clear. I help Ted out with different things, okay?
Does he pay you?
No. Well,
Complain about what you want.
Does anybody else know the definition of zoning? I'm asking.
What is the legal definition?
I'm just asking.
we can all, go ahead, Tammy,
No,
what's the
well-
definition of zoning? Just tell us.
I don't know, I'm asking.
Okay, well, good, because I don't either. But like I say, as far as I'm concerned, it's there to lay
And-
down
And the
rules
last
and
time I asked
regulations.
the supervisors,
Because
all three of
I
them said they're
do
still
have a
on the fence
question.
about it. They don't
Once I
even
know the
want to admit
definition,
that
I
they
just wanted
want
to
it.
know.
I've not heard one supervisor say they're for it. I've asked them, and Doug Teagard said, don't put words in my mouth. They've all said they're on the fence.
I'll say it again. Don't put words on my mouth.
Keep pushing it. We'll know it's pretty much fruit.
Just-
Michael, did you?
Lee,
Amen. I mean, it just says to put it in there. The legal definition, right? I don't have that access to that right now.
it's the regulation of the use of real property by local government. Now, the problem is that the current zoning does more than regulate land use. There are hours.
That was my question, was if zoning deals with the use of land, because I know that's what we've talked about, the land use. And as I read through this last draft, and I got to the medical marijuana part, which, I try and read every one, I noticed that it started to restrict the hours of operation. It starts to restrict, what their permits are allowed to have. So my question is, if this document is only for